Hi guys, and welcome back to another video by Miss Riley's Classroom. Today we're looking at sentences. The Year 8 Australian curriculum requires that students understand a variety of sentence structures throughout their writing. Once a writer knows the difference between the sentence types, it is possible to write with sentence variety. Sentence variety helps make your writing more interesting. There are 4 types of sentences: simple, compound, complex, and compound complex. Simple sentences contain a subject and a verb. They express a single complete thought, and in English we say that a simple sentence is a single independent clause. For example, the cat crept through the house. We have one subject, which is the cat, and we have one independent clause, which is crept through the house. A clause is a group of words that includes a subject and a verb. A clause is different to a phrase which does not contain a subject and a verb. For example, a phrase might just be in the afternoon or drinking from the bowl. Examples of dependent clauses might be Tara ate a cheese roll after she watched the news. After we watch the news is a dependent clause because it does not work as a standalone sentence. Independent clauses are clauses that can stand alone as a sentence, which means it is one complete thought. An independent clause must have a subject and a verb. For example, life is something that happens when you can't get to sleep. Another one, the best defense against the atomic bomb is not to be there when it goes off. Next up, we have compound sentences. A compound sentence consists of 2 or more independent clauses, or simple sentences, joined by a coordinating conjunction, such as and, but, and or. For example, our first sentence was, the cat crept through the house. We had one subject and one independent clause. If we had another simple sentence right beside it, it might be, the cat still did not catch the mouse. Now we have 2 subjects and 2 independent clauses. To make a compound sentence, we need to combine the 2 by using a coordinating conjunction. Now we have, the cat crept through the house, but he still did not catch the mouse. Another example we have is, she works in the city, but she lives in the suburbs. Here we can see 2 independent clauses, which both could stand alone, joined by a coordinating conjunction such as but. You might like to use this easy to remember acronym FANBOYS to help you remember other coordinating connectives. We have for, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. Some other coordinating connectives. If you eat this apple, then you can eat an Oreo. The word then is showing us it comes after. I liked the Avengers movie, however Harry Potter is better. Here, however is showing us another sentence is connected. Miss Riley lets us listen to music, therefore she is my favourite teacher. Without the first one, the second sentence cannot exist. Then we move into complex sentences. A complex sentence contains one independent clause and at least one dependent clause. Unlike a compound sentence, a complex sentence contains clauses which are not equal. Let's look at this simple example. We have 2 simple sentences. My friend invited me to a party. I do not want to go. The compound sentence would be, my friend invited me to a party, but I do not want to go. And the complex sentence looks like, although my friend invited me to a party, I do not want to go. The word although shows us that the 2 ideas are different. In the first example, there are 2 separate sentences. My friend invited me to a party and I do not want to go. The second example joins them together into a single sentence with the coordinating connective but both parts could still stand independent. They are entirely equal and the reader cannot tell which one is more important. My friend invited me to a party, but I do not want to go. The third example, however, the sentence has changed quite a bit. The first clause, although my friend invited me to a party, has become incomplete. It has become dependent on the second clause. A complex sentence is very different from a simple or a compound sentence because it makes clear which ideas are most important. When you write, my friend invited me to a party, I do not want to go, or even my friend invited me to a party, but I do not want to go, the reader will have trouble knowing which piece of information is most important to you. When you write the subordinating conjunction although at the beginning of the first clause, you make it clear that the fact your friend invited you is less important than, or subordinate, to the fact that you do not want to go. Another example could be John cannot plug in his phone because the charger is broken. We have the subject, John. We have the independent clause, John cannot plug in his phone. We have a connective, because. And we have a dependent clause, the charger is broken. Another example, she will have to stay in at lunchtime unless she finishes her work in class. She is the subject. The independent clause is she will have to stay in at lunchtime. The connective is unless she finishes her work in class. This is dependent because she finishes her work in class does not make sense without the first part. You need to use a comma after the dependent clause if it is the first part of the sentence. When I first moved to the city, I was nervous to use modern public transport. The connective is at the beginning, when, followed by the dependent clause, when I first moved to the city. We have the comma, followed by an independent clause. I was nervous to use modern public transport. This is the part of the sentence that makes sense on its own. This relies on the independent clause. So in review, let's remember that a complex sentence contains an independent clause and at least one dependent clause. Both clauses in the sentence are not equal. They cannot be both dependent or independent. For example, she planted the flowers that he enjoyed smelling are two different ideas. They are not equal. In a complex sentence, either the dependent or the independent clause can come first. Even though it was late, everyone was celebrating. Even though is the connective, used at the beginning, and in this sentence, it is used later on. Everyone was celebrating even though it was late. I've included a list of other subordinating connectives which you might find useful in your own writing. Alright, let's hit the books. So, let's work out, are these sentences? The first one, when we went on a long journey through the woods on a sunny Friday morning. It's a dependent clause. It was fine. That is a sentence. Because he was not only tall but also one of the hardest workers in the area. That is a dependent clause. Here we have the connective because, which means we rely on something else at the beginning. Same with when. Sing that song. That is a sentence. You're doing really well so far. Moving on to the last type of sentence, which is compound complex. A compound complex sentence has at least two independent clauses and at least one dependent clause. The same subordinating connectives are used to introduce the dependent clauses, and the same coordinating connectives, the fanboys, are used for joining the independent clauses. Let's have a look at this example. Although she worked hard to get an A, many teachers did not know who she was and her parents did not even appreciate her effort. The subordinating connective is although. The dependent clause is that she worked hard to get an A. Independent clause is many teachers did not know who she was. The coordinating connective is and. Linking our next independent clause, her parents did not even appreciate her effort. Another example. Mike is popular because he is good looking, but he is not very happy. We have our first independent clause, Mike is popular, a coordinating connective because, The dependent clause, he is good looking, our subordinating connective, but, and our final independent clause, he is not very happy. There's been a lot to remember and you're doing really well so far. Let's review. What type of sentence is this? Most of the rotten eggs missed the actors, but one hit the orchestra. That is a compound sentence. It is two independent clauses joined together. Because the weather along the coast was cold and rainy, we spent the day in the desert. That is complex. When he had finished the test, Tommy ate a litre of chocolate ice cream and Harley drank a chocolate milkshake. That is a compound complex sentence. We have at least two independent clauses, one dependent clause, and two subjects. A lion, a tiger, and a bear appeared on stage. That one's simple. There's a couple more. Sandy's car started to fall apart after the mechanic adjusted the engine. That is complex. When his computer crashed for the third time, Lachlan began to cry, and his mother tried to comfort him. We have a compound complex sentence. Ella, who is my sister's best friend, set out to find a red rose. That is complex. The bag was on board and the motors were warmed up, but Adrian hesitated. That one's compound. To summarise, we covered 4 types of sentences. Simple sentences, where we drove from Port Lincoln to Adelaide in one day. Compound sentences, we were exhausted, but we arrived in time for my mother's birthday party. Complex sentences, although she is now 81 years old, she still claims to be 75. And compound complex sentences, after it was all over, my mother claimed she knew we were planning something, but we think she was really surprised. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in class.